Now we already know that lines with gradients m1 and m2 are parallel if the gradients are the same. What we're going to look at in this clip is what condition is needed for the lines to be perpendicular. Perpendicular, of course, means that the lines will be at right angles to one another. Here are two perpendicular lines, and here are some questions about them for you. Once you've done part C, you should have a good idea of what happens when two lines are perpendicular. Press pause and have a go at these questions. When you're ready, press play. You should have found that the gradient of the line AB is 2, and the gradient of the line CD is minus a half. Now if I multiply these two gradients together, that's 2 times minus a half, and that gives me minus 1. Let's quickly look at another pair of perpendicular lines. So the gradient of the purple line is 3, and the gradient of the black line is minus a third. If I multiply these together, I get minus 1 again. So lines with gradients m1 and m2 are perpendicular if, when you multiply the two gradients together, you get minus 1. Now using that fact, we can quickly work out the perpendicular gradients to these gradients here. So for 5, I find the reciprocal of 5, which is 1/5, and change the sign. This one's positive, so this will be negative. Let's check this works. 5 times minus 1/5 is definitely minus 1. So we find the reciprocal of minus 6, which is minus 1/6, and we change the sign. This is minus, so we want to change this to a positive. So the answer actually looks like this. So here I find the reciprocal, that's 9/4, and I change the sign, so this will be negative. And for this one, I find the reciprocal, that's minus 3/2, and I change the sign. So you can think of this as turning it upside down and then changing the sign. Here are some for you to try. Press pause and have a go. When you're ready, press play. Here are the answers. Here's another question for you now. Press pause and have a go. When you're ready, press play. To prove that the two lines are perpendicular, we multiply the gradients together, so that's minus 2 multiplied by a half. If it comes out to be minus 1, they're perpendicular, and it does. And we finish with a statement, saying that the gradients multiply to give minus 1, so the lines are perpendicular. Here's a much more difficult question for you to try. Press pause and have a go. When you're ready, press play. For this question, you needed to find the coordinates of M. You do this by adding the x coordinates of A and B and halving, you get 4, and the y coordinates of A and B and halving, you get 7. So the coordinates of M are 4, 7. You also needed to find the gradient of AB, and I've done that using this formula here, and the gradient of AB is minus a third. You also needed to find the gradient of MC. Again, I've used this formula here, and the coordinates I found for M. I get this answer, the gradient is 2. To finish off, I multiply the two gradients together, so that's minus a third times 2. Now I don't actually have to work this out, I can see straight away that it's not going to equal minus 1, so the lines are not perpendicular. So this is my final answer. You'll notice that the question says you must justify your answer, and all of this working out is my justification. This question has two parts. In the first part, I'm asked to find the equation of the line which passes through points A and B. So I start by drawing that line. Now the equation will have the form y equals mx plus c. I need to find the gradient, and I know the gradient is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to call this x1, y1, and this x2, y2. So for the gradient, I get 9 minus minus 6 over 2 minus minus 1. So that's 15 over 3, and that's a gradient of 5. So my equation will be y equals 5x plus c. Now to find c, I need to use either of these two pairs of coordinates. I'm going to use this one because I don't like the negatives. So here, y is 9 and x is 2. So I get 9 equals 10 plus c. That tells me that c is minus 1, so my equation is y equals 5x minus 1. And this is the answer to part A. Now in part B, I'm asked to find the equation of the line which passes through point C and is perpendicular to AB. So the gradient will be perpendicular to 5. That tells me that the gradient will be minus 1/5. So it's going to be minus 1/5 x plus c. Now to find c, I'm going to use the only point I've got, which is this one here. Y is 5. So I've got 5 equals minus 1/5. X is minus 5, so that's times minus 5, plus c. So 5 equals minus 1/5 times minus 5 is 1, plus c, so c must be 4. So the equation is y equals minus 1/5 x plus 4. And this is the answer to part B. Here's a question for you. Press pause and have a go. When you're ready, press play. Here are the answers.